Today, we're going to explore the most incredible story you'll ever hear. Because it's the story of you. It's the physical journey your body is on this very second. A journey that follows a kind of biological blueprint from the moment you were born, through all the chaos of your teen years, into the long stretch of adulthood, and right into the science of how and why we all age. I mean, really think about it. How did you become the person you are today? It's a journey every single one of us shares, but it's also completely uniquely personal. From your very first breath to your last, your body is following this amazingly complex and fascinating blueprint. So how in the world does it all work? Well, let's trace that blueprint chapter by chapter. So here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to break it down into 4 key stages. First up, we'll look at the absolutely explosive growth of our early years in what we're calling the first sprint. Then we dive into the radical reconstruction of our teenage years, the Great Remodel. After that, we hit the long plateau of adulthood. And finally, we're going to tackle the big one, why we age. All right, our story starts at a truly incredible pace. I mean, the first few years of life are a period of growth so fast, it is never, ever repeated. As an infant, you grow about 3/4 of an inch every single month, and you nearly triple your birth weight in that first year alone. But this isn't random chaos. It's all following a very specific plan. You see, this explosive growth follows 2 master plans. The first one is called cephalocaudal. It's a fancy term that just means head to tail. It's why our brains and our eyes develop way faster than our jaw, and it's why babies can see things and use their hands long before they can even think about crawling. The second plan is proximodistal, or near to far. This just means our torso and our arms develop before our hands and fingers. We get control from the center of our bodies, and it works its way out. But you know, the real superstar of this first sprint has got to be the brain. It gets a massive head start. At the moment you're born, it's already 1/4 of its final adult weight. And even that is nothing compared to what's about to happen next. The speed of that development is it's stunning. In just 2 short years, your brain rockets from 25% all the way to 75% of its adult weight. Now, this isn't just about getting bigger, it's about getting connected. So how does the brain wire itself up so incredibly fast? Well, the brain uses this brilliant strategy called blooming and pruning. First, it just goes wild making connections. It creates nearly twice as many connections between neurons as it will ever actually need. That's the blooming part. Then, based on your experiences, everything you see, hear, and touch in your early life, it starts pruning away the connections that aren't being used. This is why our early environment is so unbelievably important. It is literally sculpting the physical architecture of our brains. And all this construction, it requires a ton of energy and downtime. And that's why infants spend fully half, of their sleep time in REM sleep, the active, dream-filled stage. For adults, it's only about 20%. Scientists think this intense REM sleep might actually be fueling the brain's development, acting as a kind of self-stimulation for a mind that's growing at warp speed. Okay, so after the relative calm of childhood, the body launches its next massive construction project, puberty. And believe me, this isn't just about a few awkward growth spurts. This is a complete, top-to-bottom, no-holds-barred renovation. The architects of this whole remodel are hormones. And they don't just nudge things along, they unleash a flood. I mean, just to put this in perspective, testosterone levels can shoot up by a factor of 18 in boys. For girls, levels of a key estrogen, estradiol, can increase 8-fold. It's this massive chemical surge that drives all those profound physical changes of our teenage years. Meanwhile, inside the teenage brain, there's this incredible mismatch going on. The limbic system, that's the emotional, reward-seeking part of the brain, it matures early. It's like having a high-powered engine. But the prefrontal cortex, the part in charge of planning, impulse control, and good decision-making, that doesn't fully mature until our mid-20s. So what you've got is a powerful engine with really weak brakes. And that right there is a huge reason for the increased risk-taking and emotional intensity of adolescence. Another part of this whole remodel, the biological clock gets completely reset. There's a delay in when the body releases melatonin, which means teenagers are biologically programmed to go to bed later and wake up later. The sleep researcher Mary Karskadon put it perfectly. Their brains are basically on a different time zone from the rest of the world, especially from those early starting schools. So after the teenage remodel, we enter the longest phase of our physical lives, adulthood. This is a time of peak performance, followed by very gradual and, let's be honest, often subtle decline that many of us are probably pretty familiar with. In our 20s, we are basically at our peak. Our physical performance is at its absolute highest, usually somewhere between ages 19 and 26. But by our 40s and 50s, the shifts start to happen. We might lose a little bit of height because of bone loss in the vertebrae, our muscle mass starts to decline, and bone loss speeds up, particularly for women. That age-related loss of muscle actually has a name: sarcopenia. It's a totally natural process, where after age 50, we can lose muscle mass at a rate of 1 to 2% every single year. But here's the good news. Resistance training has been shown to be one of the absolute best ways to slow it way, way down. And this shows a really crucial point about this long plateau. While some decline is gonna happen no matter what, our lifestyle choices matter a lot. The American Heart Association's Life Simple 7 is a perfect example. These 7 factors are all things we can actually do something about to improve our heart health. And as one study found, they can even help with recovery from a heart attack later in life. So, we've seen how we grow, how we remodel, and how we plateau. But that leaves the ultimate question, doesn't it? Why is decline programmed into our blueprint at all? Why do our bodies eventually wear out? Let's dive into the science of the end game. First off, it's really important to understand the difference between two terms. Life expectancy is the average number of years someone is expected to live, and that number has shot up dramatically thanks to medicine and public health. But lifespan, that's the absolute maximum number of years a human can live, and that number has been stubbornly stuck at around 120 to 125 years. This tells us there's a biological hard limit. So what's the reason for this hard limit? Well, the leading explanation is called the cellular clock theory. It was proposed by a scientist named Leonard Hayflick, and it suggests that our cells are basically programmed to divide only a certain number of times, about 75 to 80 times to be exact. And after that, they just stop. It's like every cell has a built-in retirement plan. So how does this clock actually work? Well, our chromosomes have these little protective caps at their ends called telomeres. Just think of them like the plastic tips on shoelaces that keep them from fraying. Every single time a cell divides, a tiny piece of that telomere is lost. It gets shorter and shorter. After about 70 or 80 divisions, the telomeres become too short to protect the chromosome, and that cell stops dividing for good. This aging process, happening in trillions of cells, is what drives the aging of our entire body. You know, no one understood this finite journey better than Jean Calment, the oldest documented person in history. She lived to be 122, reaching the very edge of the human lifespan. And her witty reply here just captures the simple, stark truth of our biological clock. Even for the longest-lived among us, the journey eventually comes to an end. From the explosive sprint of infancy to the final taking of our cellular clock, our bodies follow this incredibly intricate and predictable blueprint. But all along the way are choices. How we live, how we learn, how we connect with others. They shape the structure that we build on that foundation. The plan is set, but the life you build with it, that's all up to you.